Today we share an episode by the Messy Family Project with Mike and Alicia Hernan with guest Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse of the Ruth Institute. Dr. Morse discusses the crucial role of family in today's society. As a renowned economic and founder of the Ruth Institute, Dr. Morse shares her profound insights into the unique contributions of both mothers and fathers. She delves into the impact of the sexual revolution and emphasizes the importance of nurturing children within a stable family environment. Tune in to explore these vital topics and discover how families can shine as beacons of hope in our world.
Family, all in this together. Family, we're taking a chance. Family, like birds of a feather. Family, kick off your shoes and dance.
Hey, we are Mike and Alicia Hernan, and we have 10 kids and grandkids too, and we are here for every parent.
Because we are on a mission to empower moms and dads to embrace their sacred calling. So join the conversation.
All in this together. Family, we're taking a chance.
Welcome to the podcast. We're so glad you joined us today. You are in for a treat. This is somebody who I think has had a powerful impact in the world, the intellectual world, as well as in the particularly the marriage and family space.
Yes, yeah.
And somebody we've gotten to meet a couple times now.
Right.
And
So we're going to be interviewing Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse, and I love strong women. I love strong women so much, and she is such a firecracker.
she is.
She is totally a live wire, and when I met her and I heard her speak about feminism and about socialism and sexual equalism, which is all of these isms, just to notice how they affect the family and why, I think is so very important. I really think that these big ideas, right? These big ideas are important to talk about, because when we have intellectuals that give the ideas, I think that helps confirm for us what we have figured out through practicing it, through just experience. And we're like, okay, that's why I've always thought that was true. And now I have the reason why.
And she's an economist. She's an academic. She is a researcher, and she's a very devout, faithful Catholic, and she's written a ton, right?
Yeah.
And she really does a great job.
She's passionate.
She is passionate about why moms and dads are so important, particularly the moms, and the physical and emotional connections necessary for the development of children. Why, and in addition to so many other things, we get into a lot in this conversation. But she is the founder of the Ruth Institute, and she is the author again of a ton of books that we'll link below. But anyway, maybe we can just jump right into the conversation with Dr. Morse. It is so wonderful to have you, Dr. Jennifer Roback Morse. It was a pleasure really being with you in Kansas, but also knowing of your work for many years. We're just so excited to have you on the program. So thanks for joining us.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed meeting you guys too. And I was not familiar with your endeavor there with the Messy Family, but I've totally supported it. To me, the question of marriage and family has so many facets to it that, you can really, I've been studying it probably 25 years, maybe more, depending on how you count, and it's like, you can take it and just kind of rotate it a little and you'll see something new.
Yes.
It's just, it's so foundational, and it's crazy that we take it for granted the way we do, because it really does deserve our attention. So I'm glad for what you guys are doing. It's great.
Well, it's actually, that is an excellent way of saying one of the reasons I was so excited to have you on is that exact picture. I feel like we are coming from marriage and family from a very practical, experiential standpoint. But when I heard your talk at the Midwest Family Conference, I recognized immediately you were a woman with the same values as us, but who was looking at family from a different facet. And I found it so encouraging to just here's some of the science behind what we have experienced, as to be true. And also I was immediately attracted to you because you strike me as a woman who is extremely intelligent and doesn't give a crap what anybody thinks. You're just going to say what you believe. And I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I try to call it like I see it. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
And, you know, and the thing is too, you guys, is that again, because this is such a vast subject and because there's been so much confusion created, you know, within our lifetimes, I gather we're probably around the same age group. Everybody has a part to play in the reconstructive process. You know, I figured out a long time ago that if no matter how smart I am or how successful I was or anything like that, no matter how good I did, it wouldn't be enough. It just would not be enough because there's so much that needs to be done, you know. So I try to keep an open mind when people contact me, or a little old lady contacts me with a question. I try to respond, you know, in a respectful manner. If people come to me with their little projects, I'm like, you know what? If you're doing something, you're my guy. I don't care. I don't need to talk to only PhDs, okay? I have enough PhDs in my life, you know. You know what I mean? It's like if you're going to do something, you know, I have people who've written to me who've written children's books to counter the transgender business. Okay. I had a guy write to me literally just this morning. I responded to this guy. He's got some project where people can monitor what's going on in their own libraries.
Yes.
In their community. You know, it's like, now you and I can't do that. You know, no one person. So it's like everybody's got a role to play in it. And you have a very different network than my network, I think. And so I just want to really encourage your people who are watching the show.
Yes.
You know, whatever your gifts and talents are, wherever God has situated you, you know, bloom where you're planted, baby, because we need it. You know, we need it. We really do. We need all hands on deck for this business.
I always call it fellow workers in the vineyard. Like I feel like when I meet certain people like yourself, my heart is just so drawn to you because I feel like here is a fellow worker in the vineyard that is so vast and there is so much work to do. Right. There is so much work to do.
Well, and also too, you bring this beautiful perspective looking at as an economist, right? And also really just there's such you can tell in your writings and your speaking, there's a deep curiosity of why why the family is so potent and powerful and vital, not just for itself and for children, but for all of society. And your book on love and economics. It takes a family to raise a village. Yeah. I love the title. Yes. I love the merging of those two books in many ways. Yeah. But you bring a unique perspective that I think families need to be encouraged by. Yes. The power and the potency of family life. Why is that? Or what case do you make, if you will, maybe just in that book, but in general, that would be to family in the trenches, to moms and dads in there?
Well, you know, I don't know where to begin.
I know.
Well, let me put it to you this way. Okay, so my training is in economics, and in economics, we assume that people pursue their own self-interest, and that through the magic of the invisible hand and the competitive free market, that everything will kind of work out in the end. And you don't have to have a huge amount of regulation. You know, I mean, that's the framework in economics that I was brought up in.
Right.
And it's a compelling story. It's an attractive story, and it's largely true. There are limits to it, right? But there's an element of truth to that. Well, what I discovered when I became a mom, and only when I became a mom did this become clear to me, that there isn't that people are not born ready to make transactions and defend their self-interest and make contracts and make agreements and behave themselves, basically to use your freedom without bothering other people too much.
Yes.
How does that even work? You know, and so, you know, it was becoming a mom. You have 9 kids. I only have 2, but I had my 2 within 6 months of each other. So there.
Pretty impressive.
You know, but we had an adopted child who was 2.5 years old when we got him. And then 6 months later, we gave birth to a daughter. So we had a son and a daughter, 3 years apart in chronological age, but who arrived within 6 months of each other. And having those 2 kids at the same time showed us just how much moms and dads really do. Because our little boy had been in one of those minimal care orphanages in Romania. Okay. And we were in the first batch of people to get those kids. This is 1991 we're talking about, right? So, everybody was all excited about the Berlin Wall going down and the whole thing, and it was like, we really didn't know what we were dealing with as a family and as society as a whole. But what became clear to me is that kids really, truly do need their moms and dads. Yes. And if you don't get it done, and some of that developmental timetable is hardwired. And if you miss the window, you're going to have a really hard time. You can, but it's a lot of work, to go back in and to try to deal with it. And so if you ask the question, what is the invisible hand mechanism that gets a child from infancy to 18? And the answer is, there isn't one. There isn't one. There's nothing invisible about it. There are some very specific things that you need to consciously and intentionally do. And if you mess up, it's going to be a problem,
Right.
And the biggest thing that we were worried about, and, I apologize for going into the personal stuff, but the personal stuff is how we figured it out, right?
That's right.
That the scariest thing for us as parents was attachment disorder. Okay. And there's a thing called attachment disorder, which is when the child doesn't care about anybody but themselves. And they never connect with people.
They can never find secure attachment or safety.
They never find secure attachments. And then if they've really got it bad, they'll be truly antisocial because they won't have a conscience. And I talked about that in the talk that you guys went to in Kansas, and just really, if a person doesn't have a conscience, you can't turn them loose with their freedom. Because they will bother other people. They really will be a problem.
Right.
So, and that's what Love and Economics was about. And I just became so convicted that what we do as mothers is absolutely crucial and irreplaceable. And so, I was a replacement mom in a sense, as an adoptive mom.
Sure.
I'm not naive about that. The best thing for him would have been if none of that had happened to him and his own mom could have taken care of him. That would have been the best.
Right.
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 Right. And so there I am, doing my best with this situation, to heal it and to, bring some closure to it. And by the way, our boy is fine. So he's grown up now, and everything. But but
it was a struggle, I'm sure.
It was nip and tuck. We didn't know and how it was going to turn out. We did a lot. He's done a lot. Right.
Sure.
But the point is that what mom and dad do in those early years really is irreplaceable.
Yeah.
It really is. And we as women particularly have been sold a bill of goods that, you can pop the kids in daycare at age 6 weeks and everything will be fine. And, no, and that our highest value is what we do in the paid labor force.
Yes.
Right.
And I think that's actually
true.
That's a big deal. Like, because again, just merging the title, the Love and Economics, right? We too often reduce ourselves to economic, we're units of production, we're means of production. Right. And that's not a Catholic, Christian, or even human understanding of the human person, right?
100%. It's a grave misunderstanding of the human person. And so I really wanted to, when I started the Ruth Institute in 2008, what I really wanted to deal with was to help young women in particular to understand you don't need to wait until you have made partner in the law school, in your law firm, before you start your family. You don't need to do that. You can get started in your 20s. You sometime before menopause, you can get started, and it'd be okay. You're not going to die. Your brain won't turn to mush.
Right.
And if we don't do it, nobody else can really do it. It's the idea that it's not valuable because it's not paid. That's just so wrong.
Right.
That's just so wrong, and I just.
Yeah. So can we hone into the, cause you're right, this is such a broad thing of why families are important. Can you just for 1 second, since we're talking about mothers, I'd like to just kind of talk about moms for a minute and to give the moms who are listening, who are at home with maybe 3 kids under 4 or 4 kids under 5 or 1 kid who's driving them crazy or whoever it is. Can you just give them a little snapshot of why they are so important. Then we'll talk about dads too, but just to begin with, let's just talk about those moms and what they are doing for their child.
Why are they irreplaceable?
Yeah, yes. Well, because when a child is born, they're helpless. Okay. And this is the thing, the modern world has a lot of trouble dealing with helpless people, right? Because we have this whole idea of autonomy and independence and all that stuff. But the fact is, every human person comes into the world as a helpless baby. That's not some fluke once in a blue moon thing. That's the human condition.
The way it is.
That's the condition.
The way it is. And therefore we need to develop, and we need safe space to develop and all of that. But the most specific thing that mothers do is that you're allowing the child to attach to you, and you're helping the child learn to be a social being. Is the simplest way to put it. So, and in fact, some people would describe it as the mother-child dyad. Like until the child is a little bit older, I don't know what age they would put it at, 2 years old or something. You're really like one unit. There's the mother-baby unit, and that's why dad shows up and the baby's like not interested in dad. He doesn't smell like us. Get out of here. We're a thing. Mom and me, we're a thing. But what you're doing every time the baby cries and you go to the baby, you're creating that sense of trust that the world is safe for him, that if he cries, somebody will come and help. And by contrast, if the baby cries and nobody comes, you got to think about that. I had to think about that, right? When our boy came, he didn't cry. Okay, it's not normal for a child to not cry, right? They stop crying because nobody comes, right? And they kind of withdraw and they turn in on themselves. And every time they cry and they're sitting there with a wet diaper or they're hungry or whatever it is, nobody comes, they get this sense reinforced that I'm not worthy. I don't belong here. I might die. What's going to happen? I guess I better take care of myself. And obviously they're not thinking that in a rational way, but somehow in their little psyches, that
it's the lesson that's learned.
The world isn't safe, and it's not here for me.
And it's not here for me. Nobody's here for me. It's it's me or it's nobody. And again, by contrast, another thing that goes on when moms are rocking their babies or nursing their babies, there's a lot of neurological development that goes on just from the act of rocking the baby, just going like this, looking at the baby, making eye contact with the baby. There's a part of the brain. I talk about this, not so much in Love and Economics, but because it took me a while to learn all this stuff. I mean, there's a lot out there to learn, but the brain actually develops from being in relationship with the mother, And so all of this is cultivating the child's ability to be in relationship with others, to notice others, to respond appropriately to others, so that as they get older and they have to take actions on their own, they care. If mommy's unhappy with me, they care about mommy being unhappy, right? So it's like you stop doing that. First you have to make them stop, and then they get the vibe that mom doesn't like it, and I want mom to like me. And then you don't have to be picking them up all the time, which is great, because when they're 14, you really need to be able to control them from a distance, right?
Sure, exactly, right? Exactly.
And so that's all groundwork that is being laid, and it's you can really think of it as the foundation of the personality in a way, because it's below the surface. You don't see it. You don't talk about it. You don't, the most important stuff, there's an incredibly important stuff that's taking place pre-verbally. It's not just before the child can think and be rational and, fill out a checkbook or something. It's before they can even talk that this is going on, which is why, parenthetically, why the pro-life people are so profoundly correct to say this is a human person from conception on. When people are saying, well, this is not a rational being yet. This person can't make decisions. This person, blah, 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 blah. Well, if you wait until the child has reached the age of reason before you say, I'm going to treat them like a fellow human being, right? Exactly. If you keep them on on probation, right?
Yeah.
The Peter Singers of the world want to keep everybody on probation until they've reached the age of reason. By that time, if you've really treated them like they're disposable, and you might get rid of them if they make you mad,
right?
You've done incalculable harm.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
It really, and it might be almost irreparable at some points, right? There's some studies that point to the fact that it's really hard to come back when those 0 to 6 years that are, the failure to thrive and all that other, right, that comes with that.
Well, you know what? One thing I was thinking about, I wanted to ask you about, and I love that, and listening to your talk, you talked about the rocking the baby and the neurological things that happen, which are so fascinating. I wonder with the modern mom, even those moms who are staying home and holding their babies, about them, and I think about this all the time, about them holding their baby, but being on their phone, holding their baby, but not connecting. You know, I don't know if that's something
parenting.
that, yes, like because I've thought about that so much of how often, especially with young parents today, how their phones are I see it with my own kids. I start to see it with myself, it's like almost like an extension of yourself.
Yeah.
And I worry how that is going to affect children later on who are raised by distracted parents.
Yeah. And I don't think we know that yet, but I think your intuition is sound that we need to be attentive to that. When you're nursing the baby, put the phone down.
Right.
I mean, sometimes people try to read while they're taking care of the baby and stuff like that, and you can do that up to a point. I don't want people to freak out over it. But the eye contact is really important. I mean, I would say that the eye contact's really important.
Yeah.
And another thing that this is a little quirky because of my background as somebody who studies stuff, and I know about surveys and whatnot. If they have moms doing time use surveys. So, some of the, there's a body of research there used to be, especially when we were talking about gay parenting and gay marriage and all that kind of stuff. How much time do parents really spend with their kids? How much time does mom really spend? And if you just fill out the time of what you're doing at each moment, that doesn't really capture it. Because even if you're doing the dishes and your baby's over there sitting on the table in their rockaroo or whatever, the baby makes a little noise and you respond to the little noise,
Exactly.
They do some little coo and you coo back, or, and you're having a little conversation there. But if somebody asks you, what were you doing during that 15-minute interval, you would probably write down housework,
Right.
You check off the housework box. It's like,
Right.
We have this tendency in our kind of scientific way of thinking of breaking things down into their parts. But at some point we have to put the parts back together as a whole integrated person.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
I was thinking about even that example, because something about watching a phone or social media is much more sucks you in more than even reading a book or something. And so it's like,
it's more consuming.
If I'm doing the dishes and I'm watching Instagram or something, it very well is more likely to happen. My baby makes a noise and I don't respond because I'm paying attention to this thing. And then there's that lack of response that you were just talking about. How important is that? Is baby makes a noise, mom responds. Happy, not even just in distress, but just even like regular happy, cute noises, it's something to be aware of.
We're missing out as adults. We're missing the fun of that interaction. We're watching them try to pick themselves up and they fall down and then they look at you. They look at you when they're trying to do something, right? And what do they need? They need you to, kind of give them that look like, oh, try again. That was so good that you did that. And you.
Right.
Yeah, it's the human business. And there is, I will just say, I'm by no means an expert in this area, but there is a whole body of work within child development that deals with attachment and measuring attachment and observing it and assisting people in doing a better job of it and so on and so forth. And we know very well by now that the primary attachment that you make, by age 2 has a lot of long-term consequences, so it's worth investing in that, I don't know how your moms out there listening want to conceptualize this, to make it make sense for them. But
right.
It's worth the time. It's worth the
Exactly.
effort.
Yeah.
It is not, you are not doing nothing. You are not wasting your time. I just really want people to know that.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And I feel like there's a layer that moms need to be encouraged and see that hidden work on a whole new level. Mm-hmm. And again, you brought this out and it's just so beautiful. All right. So what about us dads? Do we offer anything in this equation?
100%. 100% you do. Yeah.
Can you give any insights for dads? The dynamic that we bring, if you will, to the child and the growth and the development of it.
So one of the interesting things about it, and I'm sure you guys have experienced it, is that as the child ages, as the child grows, the roles of the parents shift around. And the father is important all the time. The mother is important all the time, but you are in different ways, right?
Yes.
And
yes. And I feel like there's leaders at different times in the child's life sometimes too, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But when in infancy, the most important role of the father is to love the mother.
Amen.
The first duty of a good father is to love the child's mother.
Love it.
That's what's so wrong with a lot of the third-party reproduction stuff and so on and so forth. Because when you think about it, loving your child's mother is the way you ordinarily become a father in the first place.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
That should be, we don't have to get too explicit.
Let's keep it going then. So it starts with that. So let's continue it rolling.
It starts with that you love her, you encourage her when she's tired, you're there for her.
Yes.
All of it. You're providing the safety for her so that she can provide the safety for the baby.
Yes. Yes. That's the perfect model, right? Because again, that's how the love began in the first place. I always feel like that love it's how that child was born into this world. And that love is how they need to be sustained.
Yes, 100%. And I think you can also see that the relationship, the love between the mother and the father is the foundation for the child's development, for the development of the personality all the way along. I think that's true. We see, because we hear from people who've had all kinds of family breakdowns and family disruptions.
Sure.
Even when the child is 30 years old and their parents get divorced, it is disruptive.
Yes. Agreed.
It is very painful, So don't think that just because the kids don't need you in a material sense, that you cease to be important, that your love continues to be of value to them. But as the child gets older, dad begins the process of escorting the child out of the home, and taking the kind of round trips out of the home and back in, and helping them learn to navigate the different things that have to be done between you're not going to be in mom's cocoon your whole life. You got to get out of there and out to something bigger and more demanding. And
we've always found that the image of even for if both parents work outside the home, mom often represents the home and the safety, and dad some level the outside world, even with both of them working. We've seen that. Do you find that to be true in your studies and research?
I think that's true. I think that's generally true. Yeah. And also the father assists children in setting limits on behavior. Okay. So, I know it sounds like a cliche, but the cliches come into existence for a reason. Wait till your father gets home. You don't want that to be your one and only parenting disciplinary move, right? And we don't, but there is something to that. Dad walks through the door and there's authority in the house, and the kids scatter and realize they can't keep doing whatever it was they were doing. That mom's got backup. Mom's not there on her own. She's got backup. It's like the police are the backups to, to various people and stuff like that. So, so that's important. But also, when dads are playing with kids, this is particularly profound, I think, for boys and the development of the boy. That when you're doing, they call it rough and tumble play, and I think everybody knows what I'm talking about. Okay, but what dad does is when someone gets hurt, the game stops. The game stops. Okay, we're done here. You need to go sit over there. I don't care if it was an accident. You hurt your brother, sit down. Those limits really need to be there. That's part of human development.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And there's both mom and dad have to do all of that, right? But there's a different way that a dad does it. And when the dad is not there, it's noticeable.
Yeah.
Especially as the kid gets older.
We at the Messy Family Project are on a mission to empower moms and dads to embrace their sacred calling. We believe that if you want to change the world, you have to start with the family.
The growth of this ministry is due to parents like you who listened to our podcast, then reviewed it and shared it. Thanks to you, we are one of the top parenting podcasts in the Catholic space. But with more ratings and reviews, we could become a leading parenting podcast even among the secular shows.
So if we've been a blessing to you, help us out and promote our ministry on social media and subscribe to the podcast. Help us become the place where all parents can find support and encouragement by giving us a 5-star review and telling your friends.
This is our full-time work. Our team and this ministry survive through the generosity of those who believe in our mission. So please consider supporting our ministry by visiting our website, where you can donate, join our community of Messy Families, and also find free downloads, resources, and more info about upcoming courses and events, all at messyfamilyproject.org.
Now back to the conversation.
Yeah, there's a level of showing and giving them the strength to take some risks, but then also know the limits for their own self-control and giving proper boundaries. I mean, there's just something that, again, that both mom and dad do. Like, dad does offer some level of comfort, but there is the comfort of a mother's arms is so much more potent, and the limits and or authority that come with the dad. Like, there's just that beautiful boundary.
So I just want to, because I personally feel like I could talk to you all day, but I want to shift a little bit because I want to cover another topic that I know that you're passionate about. And that is the
I'm going to hold up
effects.
the book though, just so everybody can
Thank
see
you.
the
Oh,
book.
perfect.
Okay,
Yes.
Love and
you can
economics.
get it. If you buy this from the Ruth Institute, I will autograph it. You can
Excellent.
buy it
Well,
on
we will put a
Amazon
link.
if you want. If you want to buy it on Amazon, fine. But if you buy it from me, I'll sign it.
There you go.
So we will put a link. We'll put a link in the show notes so people know how to buy your books at 100%.
Great.
But another book that you wrote that I also want to reference, honestly, is The Sexual State: How Elite Ideologies Are Destroying Lives and Why the Church Was Right All Along. Because I know that you're passionate about drawing attention to the devastating effects of the sexual revolution. So before we get into that, I wonder, can you just, because people, believe it or not, young people today, and including myself to some extent, that we hear the term sexual revolution. And since, like, I was born after, quote, the sexual revolution, so I don't know from experience all of the effects and what changed. So I wonder if you could first kind of define our terms. So when we say sexual revolution, what are we talking about? And then get into why it has been so devastating and brought us to our society where it is today.
Yes. Sometimes when people use the term, people will have the image of 1968 and the hippies and Haight-Ashbury and
Exactly.
the Summer of Love and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I don't, and that, that's a thing, but I try to define it pretty carefully because that's because of the way my mind works. I want to know what I'm talking about,
Love it.
Yes.
And so the way I define the sexual revolution is 3 interlocking ideologies, basically.
Okay.
And in the book, The Sexual State, I go through the ideologies, I go through the origins of them and, all of that kind of thing. But the 3 ideologies, if you start with these 3 things, you'll cover the ground. Every crazy thing that seems to be afflicting the family and society and so on, you can fit it into one of these 3 categories. Okay. And so then it's much more manageable. It's not so overwhelming, right? Because I think a lot of times people feel overwhelmed by, just kind of one crazy thing out of left field after another, There's really only 3 big ideas that you have to deal with. And I like to deal with ideas and concepts rather than particular people or something like that. I don't go after people as much. So the first big idea is the idea that a good and decent society should do everything possible to separate sex from babies. Okay, that separating sex from babies is a good thing. We ought to do that. It will make everyone happy, so on and so forth. Okay.
Right.
I call that the contraceptive ideology.
Yep.
And so what flows from the contraceptive ideology is the insistence not only on contraception, but also on abortion as a backup plan.
Right.
Right. And so there's a lot of things we could say about that. But we as Catholics are among the few people, actually, I think we're the only people on planet Earth that are still kind of holding that flag, that there's a necessary connection between sex and babies.
Right.
The fact that we have birth control pills doesn't really change that fact. There is a connection, right? And we are ignoring that, or we think we're getting away with something.
Yeah.
You know
we're ignoring it at our own peril.
Yeah, and we've created a lot of problems with that. So that's the first big idea of the sexual revolution. The second big idea is the idea that we can and should separate both sex and babies from marriage. The need to be married before you have sex, that's an old-fashioned idea. The need that you need to be married before you have a baby, that's an old-fashioned idea. It's oppressive. It's a problem. It's making people crazy. People are repressed. Sigmund Freud, Wilhelm Reich, Alfred Kinsey, yada, 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 yada. The whole patron saint, the pantheon of patron saints of the sexual revolution flow up into people's mind. But the reality is that kids do, and what that's arguing against is everything I said in Love and Economics. Because what you're really saying when you say you don't need to be married before you have sex and babies is you're saying that it's a matter of no particular consequence to the child whether their parents love each other or not, whether their parents are together or not. The adults can switch out their sex partners and living arrangements as often as they want, and nothing bad will happen.
Right.
Okay? That's the divorce. I call that the divorce ideology.
Yeah.
And you can see it covers not just divorce, but also unmarried parenthood. It also includes third-party reproduction, where you buy sperm out of a catalog, or you buy an egg out of a catalog, right? That you have no relationship whatsoever to the child's other parent.
Desire.
And in fact, sorry.
I was just going to say that the belief, the way I always encapsulate that divorce ideology is that a child has a right to married biological parents.
Bingo.
That is right. That is their natural human. People talk about children's rights. This is their fundamental right.
Yes. And we have that right on our website. So if you go to our website, ruthinstitute.org, go to the About Us page, and it'll say, who we are, what we believe in. That's right on there. Okay.
Yeah,
Children have the right to a relationship with both parents, with their biological parents, unless some unavoidable tragedy takes place. Right. That does happen. And Christian society always had backup plans to help deal with those situations, because that's going to happen. But
widows and orphans always need to be taken care of, right? That's primary in scriptures and everything, right?
100%. And the family and the community and all kinds of ways of dealing with the exceptional situation. But the exceptions don't invalidate the rule, right?
Yes.
The rule is we want children to be in relationship with their married mother and father. And marriage is the thing that delivers the goods to the kids, right? The fact that mom and dad are married, that's what makes it possible, right? But the other thing that we say is that every person, without exception, has the right to know the identity of their parents, because that's their identity. That's their cultural heritage. That's their genetic identity. That's so even if your dad dies, even if your mom's mentally ill and you can't live with her, even if you were put up for adoption, eventually you get to know. Eventually you get to know, and I get I get the problem with saying it in that context, because a lot of women in problem pregnancies would much rather abort than face the prospect, when they're in the moment of decision, the prospect of 18 years from now, the child's going to show up on their doorstep. That's really hard for them. And I get that. I understand that. But that's a reason, to my mind, that's a reason for us to be supporting that woman in the problematic situation.
Right.
So that she can deal with it, so that she understands,
And it kind of like all goes back to, too, I think about this is why sex outside of marriage, you are taking such a huge risk, because there are adoptive kids who are adopted out there whose mother, it's not that they won't tell them the identity of the father. They may not know the identity of the father,
right?
And that is just
a tragedy.
It's a tragedy. And and even if you as somebody who knowing people who are adopted, who will never know the identity of their father, just to kind of recognize that it's an injustice has been done to you.
Yes.
Like, thank God your mother chose life. Thank God you have been placed in a beautiful adoptive family. That's wonderful. Like God, we have a God of miracles, right? Like he can give us, we can have the crucifixion and he can give us the resurrection. But it is also fair to say an injustice has been done.
I think we owe it to them to say that.
Yeah.
We recognize that you lost something here.
Right.
You're the one who lost something here, and we recognize that.
Right.
And the same is true for children who have been conceived through IVF or donor sperm, donor eggs, all of that kind of stuff. I had a column about that in the Register not too long ago. The Surrogacy Gone Wild, I think, is the title they put on it. But the fact is, we love you. If you were born as a product of one of these arrangements, we love you, and we know that you're a child of God and that you belong here, and you are not less than in any way whatsoever.
Of course,
regardless of circumstances.
But we need to recognize that something unjust was done to you.
Right.
That you lost something, and you may have siblings that are frozen.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Cryopreserved. I can't imagine what that would do to a person's mind. Just like we recognize the child of incest or rape does not deserve the death penalty.
Right.
I mean, we cherish that child who was born in those circumstances, but we don't get rid of the laws against rape and incest. We still have to have those boundaries on sexual conduct, to preserve everybody's best interest. So
did we get all three?
No, I think we have one contraceptive ideology, then two, we've just been talking about the divorce ideology, and the third is
the gender ideology. And the gender ideology is a very interesting phenomenon because it's morphed in so many different ways. But the basic idea is that the sex of the body is not particularly significant.
Yeah.
Right.
That's equalism.
That's the thing that unites all the disparate realms of the gender ideology together. That's what feminism is a big thing that has all kinds of facets to it and stuff like that. But one of its aspects, I think everybody would recognize, that one of its aspects was that the differences between men and women, we could overwrite them if we want to. That it's all socially constructed.
Yep.
And of course, some of it's socially constructed, but that doesn't mean you have unlimited play.
The idea of a woman can do anything a man can do. It's like,
that was the beginning of it, and it was kind of harmless. It certainly compared to what we have now, it certainly was harmless. but
that was the seeds. Those were the seeds.
Yeah. The idea that we were somehow questioning the sex of the body as a meaningful category, that we can overwrite it, rewrite it, construct, deconstruct, reconstruct any way that we want to. There are limits on that, right? And any kind of thing that really is serving the interests of women should have that in mind. That you want to serve the interests of women as women. That means that you have to respect that. And so there's a lot of controversy about whether that you want to call that feminism. Some people want to call that feminism, and I don't want to call it feminism, but that part's not important. The part that's important is that we recognize that the sex of the body is a meaningful category that should inform society. And so certain branches of feminism were a problem. Certainly the claim that homosexual practice is the equivalent of married practice, and the idea that we can reconstruct the institution of marriage so that the sex of the body isn't a category. It's not even a category. And now we have, of course, transgenderism, which claims that you can, in fact, change from being one sex to being another sex, that you can reconstruct the body completely. So all of this is a denial of the physicality of male and female, and that is a huge problem in society, creating enormous confusion, enormous amount of grief, and making it difficult for men and women to come together in a realistic manner and build lives together. Right? If you have too much, if you got too much. I'm trying to think of a polite, family-friendly word, but if you have a lot of garbage floating around in your head that's incorrect, then it's like every couple has to figure out on their own that what they were told isn't exactly correct, and
well, see, because what we see with sometimes with married couples now is being affected by that even if you're like. This kind of goes into my next question too, but basically this is the water in which we're all swimming in, of these kinds of ideas. And so then when you come to be married and you realize really how different you are as man and woman, and you need to work together in that complementarity, in some ways, I feel like it's harder than ever for couples to do that because they've been told all along, no, it's
don't
just
fall into the social construct of the gender ideal, whatever, that they think that, this is just a stereotype.
Exactly. The gender binary is what that's the word you're looking for. Yeah. Heteronormativity. You don't want to be heteronormative.
Yeah, well, and because
and it just makes it more difficult for what we've seen, as opposed to 100 years ago when the roles of men and women were much more defined and clear. I think that was also made staying married and complementarity and understanding spouses was easier because you had a culture that was supporting that.
Right.
And the thing that people, I think, miss about earlier times, and, I don't know where you want to date it or,
Yeah.
Earlier. We'll go with earlier.
I don't want to get hysterical about that. Right.
Right.
But the fact is that having some understanding of the general differences between men and women, that people can certainly within that navigate the fact that your husband is not exactly the same kind of a man. He's not manly in the same way that Arnold Schwarzenegger's a manly.
Totally.
And stuff like that. So there's that part of it. And also the fact that when you have boundaries and limits, you have tremendous freedom within that.
Yeah.
So you've got a safe zone. You look at your husband, you don't expect him to react to everything the way you do. But then the two of you, every couple can work out for themselves what the chores are going to be, who's going to do what, who's going to do that, but so people treat it like anything that fits a stereotype is somehow intrinsically oppressive. I felt that when I entered my married life and stuff like that. And you need to let go of that. You can look at the differences between men and women as being real and placing some limits, on what's going to likely to work. But you've got a lot of freedom within that.
Right. Yeah. So within, so this was kind of like, so that question I just said was kind of going into the broader question of why are these ideologies or why are these laws help people understand how they affect them? Because I think there's some people that may have an attitude of like, live and let live. Okay. I'm a Catholic and I'm raising my kids in this way. Why should I care if there is gay marriage? Why should I care if, some other people get divorced? That doesn't affect me. That doesn't affect my choices. Let's just let those people do that.
Live and let live.
And I just want to, I don't want to judge anybody. I don't want to engage in any kind of cultural judging or divide. Like, how would you help them understand?
I don't want any unpleasantness. I'm not prepared to be unpleasant about any of this.
That's right.
Yes, exactly.
What you just articulated is a kind of libertarianism, like a libertarian attitude. And actually, Love and Economics, my very first book, was actually written to confront the libertarian attitude towards the family. Because the fact is, you don't get to do just anything you want and be able to expect that everything is going to turn out okay. There are some limits on what you can and can't do if you want an actual good outcome, right? So there's that. I mean, I just want to identify that for people, that live and let live attitude it's part of the American psyche. And for the most part, it's a good thing. I mean, there's a lot to be said for it. But on the other hand, when you're talking about changing the rules of the game, when you change the rules of the game, you change the rules for everybody. You don't just change the rules for the people who say, I'm gay, so therefore I'm going to marry a same-sex partner. Now it turns out among LGBT people who get married, okay, first of all, there aren't that many who get married. Right, so we had this idea it was going to be a big rush to the altars right after the gay marriage was enacted. Right, that turned out not to be true. But if you look at the LGBT people who are married, over half of them are married to opposite sex partners. Now, why is that? Because most of them are bisexual. Okay, so people who are identifying themselves as bisexual, they're marrying opposite sex partners. Right, so somehow they're in that umbrella. But we're conveying to them that whether they marry a same-sex partner, whether they marry an opposite-sex partner, that's just a coin toss. We don't care. It's fine. Whatever you choose. And if you're inducing some of them to say, I think it'd be easier on balance for me to be married to another woman because I wouldn't have to pick up a guy's socks and all the problems that you have with men in the house. It'd be easier. Do we really want to convey to people that it's not that big of a deal, I mean that, and I think that's not correct, right? Especially if there is attached to it, as there is, a presumption that they get to have kids if they want to have kids, right? Right. So now kids are part of the equation because we've, in a sense, endorsed the idea that kids don't really need their parents. So if you go buy some sperm, that's okay, So that's one aspect of it. Another place where I think you can see it even more clearly is the whole issue of no-fault divorce.
Yes.
Okay.
Because when no-fault divorce came in, and by the way, I deal with all three of those ideologies in this book, and no-fault divorce is extremely important for this reason. It was presented to the public as an easier way for two sensible people who have decided that they don't want to be together anymore, for them to separate in a friendly manner. They don't have to prove that somebody was an adulterer. They don't have to go into court and lie about something in order for them to get their divorce that they want. And so around at that time, divorce was under 10%, maybe around 6%, something like that. And so the idea here is, okay, we're going to make it cheaper for that 6% of people to get a divorce. Okay, that's a great idea. But then what you forget is that you've now changed the incentive for everyone, not just that 6% of the population, right? And so today, when you have, many more divorces than that, right? Like 50%, some people say 50%, it's not really that, but you have a lot more than 6%, right? You have a lot more divorces.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Most divorces are not by mutual consent.
Right.
See, most of them are not. Over
That's
70%.
a big difference.
Over 70% of divorces take place against the wishes of one party.
Yeah.
Okay, so what you've done is you've changed the incentives for everybody about whether they're going to view their marriage as permanent. Because, hey, if I especially if I got a better deal. I got this guy, he makes more money than my husband, and he's going to be nice to me, and he'll let me do what I want, and bye, I'm gone. You don't have to have a good reason. You don't have to have any reason. Right. And it's the only contract that you can think of where the state always takes side with one party.
Yeah.
The person who wants it. Yeah.
The person who wants the marriage the least, the state always takes sides with them. If you go into a small claims court with a complaint against your cell phone provider, they will sometimes take your side and they will sometimes take the cell phone company's side. That is not true in divorce. Okay. And so when people said, how would my divorce affect you? That was a really stupid thing to say. If we could just now, in retrospect, realize that. Because you've really shifted the the social understanding of what marriage is all about, and
exactly,
and change the incentives for everybody. And yeah, it's much bigger than that.
And because the no-fault divorce really made the default of the government that we don't actually support marriages.
Correct.
I mean, that's become now the default de facto, and law teaches,
Yes.
and it influences our culture, and it changes not just that marriage. It's all the fruit of that marriage. It's all the societal, let alone spiritual, occurrences that go out from there. There's almost more and more that we could keep talking about, but you have really.
Unfortunately, we do need to wrap it up.
But
is it time? Getting there.
but the work you're doing at the Ruth Institute is.
We want
so
people
important.
to continue to learn from you.
So can you tell us just briefly the mission of the Ruth Institute and how people can find some more resources?
Yes.
And how they can get in touch with you?
So Ruth Institute, we are at ruthinstitute.org. That's the simplest way to find us and to, kind of plug into what we're doing. We have a weekly newsletter that we send out. It's every week got a new video and usually a new article or press release, something like that. I write articles all the time. I have a colleague who is a sociologist. His name is Father Paul Sullins. He's a Catholic priest who has a PhD in sociology. He taught sociology at Catholic U for a number of years. And when he retired, he came on the staff of the Ruth Institute. And so he's done a number of sociological studies on the impact of abortion on women's mental health. He's done stuff on same-sex parenting. He asks a lot of questions other people won't ask, So we have a whole range of topics that we deal with in the academic realm and then in the less academic realm, So come on over, sign up for our weekly newsletter, and you'll hear from us and you'll see what we're working on. You'll see our commentary on different things going on in the world, and so that will help you make sense of what's going on. And then we also have a very active Facebook page. We have a very active YouTube channel. On the YouTube channel, we do an interview program kind of like this one, where we have guests on who have something interesting to say about some facet of marriage and family life. And then from time to time, I will do some kind of commentary or reaction to something going on in the news. So, for instance, before Christmas, I don't know if this crossed your radar or not, but Tucker Carlson sat down with Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yes. Yeah.
And Milo sat there and said, nobody's born gay. And one of my staff members said, Dr. Morse, you got to respond to this because there they are saying exactly what you've been saying forever, So we create a little video where we have little clips of Tucker and Milo talking, and then I say, and he's right. And here's my little chart that will show he's right, and that kind of stuff. So I think people find those videos entertaining.
Okay.
And,
that's great.
Perfect.
And informative and stuff like that. So that's the kind of thing that we have. We also have, I want people to know, we have something that we call the Parent Resource Page, which has different organizations that you can turn to for help in different arenas. The very top thing on there is books for kids. Like I mentioned earlier on, books that, are just trying to give kids, trying to appeal to children and about topics that we would care about. But we've got a couple people who keep lists of Christian counselors. We've got a couple of legal organizations. If you need a lawyer, if your child is coming home from school saying that they've changed their name, and all that, you may need a lawyer. We got a couple of organizations listed in there that do that kind of thing. So we've turned ourselves kind of into a hub, of information around these topics because, like I've said like 14 times on this show, no one person can do it all. So we do try to kind of gather it together.
Yes.
You can start here and probably, get started finding another resource if we're not the people for you.
No, that actually is a huge service because I know like for ourselves, we have people who come to us, ask us questions. And I'm like, I know I can't answer it, but here is a trusted voice who I know will help you. So thank you so much for joining us today. Dr. Morse, we really, really appreciate it. And we really appreciate your work and God bless you. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thanks
for having me, you guys. It was a blast.
Yeah, so fun.
Thank you for listening and supporting the Ruth Institute. please check out our YouTube channel, Ruth Out and About, where you'll find all interviews with the Ruth Institute.